I know that I've been telling you guys about the Recruiting Growth Summit, a stacked list of amazing speakers. So make sure you sign up for that. But also, this guest on this podcast, Mike Lejeune, is actually hosting a virtual conference himself. And what's cool about this conference, if you have any of the certifications through like the American Staffing Association and for some of the other ones, this counts towards actual credits. So I actually have the link in the show notes that you could sign up. On top of that, you can actually use the code Accelerate 2024 to get $30 off conference registration. So excited for you guys to listen to this podcast. It's absolutely phenomenal if you are building a recruiting business. And on top of that, Mike is just phenomenal. All right. Hope you guys enjoy. I am excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast. I have a special guest with me, Mike Lejeune, and some of the things that we're going to cover. We're going to cover how do you build a self-sustaining business where you're not having to chase, all the time. And on top of that, you know, Mike does have experience of growing, scaling, and selling his recruiting firm. So we're going to talk about how do you build a high performance team, a team where it's full of winners winning, a team where everybody's making great money, and a team where everybody's working together to win together. So, Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, it's an honor to be here, Benjamin.
So, I've been looking forward to this interview. First of all, before we do a deep dive in how you even got started with recruiting, I know you have an upcoming event for the recruiting community. Can you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Just got final confirmation last night on my last speaker. Mid-February, February 20th, 21st, and 22nd, we are hosting in conjunction with the Texas Search Recruiting and Staffing Association. My company's hosting a virtual conference. Started this in the pandemic when nobody was leaving the house. And it became so popular that I just kept it year after year. And this year we have I believe the strongest lineup of speakers. Keynoter is Sammy Joe Small from Canada, Canadian Olympic athlete, three-time medalist, gold, 2 golds and a bronze. With the women's hockey team, she is the goalie of the hockey team. And I mean, just amazing growing up and how do you overcome adversity and obstacles and work your way around things, which is the recruiting industry, right? We've got
In a nutshell.
people speaking on sales, recruiting processes, using artificial intelligence. And we got this wizard going to be joining us, that the guy by the name of Benjamin Min. And so, which I'm really honored. I'm excited about being able to hear his thoughts. And specifically, Benjamin, I just loved our conversation about the approach you've taken building your business. And what do you do to create a personal connection with people using technology, where technology isn't something on the side. It's a driving force to create this interaction, personal interaction with people, which is the heart of our business.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. Definitely excited about being there. And I will make sure to have information about it in the show notes. So definitely click on the show notes for more information about it.
They can also
So,
find
Mike,
me on my website. It's mikelejeune.com or lightingthepath.net. Look there. There'll be some information there for you too.
perfect. So, we always get started with this podcast. How did you even end up in this wonderful world of recruiting?
Yeah, I'm asked that question a lot. Matter of fact, I ask that question to a lot of people because this is a strange business, isn't it?
Hmm.
It's not something you go to college and say, you know what, one day I'm going to grow up and be a recruiter. It happens rare. And I fall in that category. I moved to Houston, Texas from South Louisiana, 21 years old, right out of school. Went to work and went to interview with an organization that had 44 desks in one room. And I looked around the room and out of the 44 desks, they were all filled except just a couple of them. And they were all women except for like two guys. And I went, this is the place for me. And so that's my great market research. And I like to tell you, I selected this out of great stuff, but I got started. But what I was fascinated by and what my interest was, is I wanted to learn about business so I could figure out what I wanted to career. I was thoughtless. I had no idea, clueless on what I wanted to be. Well, so I started working, and instead of being a journey to kind of answering questions, I looked up after about 2 years. I found that I was gotten pretty good at it. And after 3 years, I found out that while I was good at the transactional part of the business, making the deals, was one of the higher producers in the company. I found out what really got me excited was teaching it, was training and developing people, watching people get excited about this business. And that got me started. And so over the years, I went from working for a company to eventually starting up my own firm. To 10 years ago, sold our company. I'd gone to work with my wife, And when got married to her, my dad said, "You signed the ultimate non-compete agreement." I said, "Yes, that's true." But she looked at me one day and said, "It's time for me to sell, for you to go and do what God created you to do, which is to help leaders increase their ability to engage and ignite performance in their people and help people, particularly in the recruiting industry, scale and learn how to do better at recruiting and business development and break barriers." And so that's the journey I've been on.
That is awesome. Well, let me jumping into your journey. You know, first of all, I love how you got started. You walk in, and you're like, oh, there's only two guys here. Perfect place for me.
That's it.
But secondly, out of all that time, what convinced you, and why did you make the jump to go start your own firm rather than just stay where you were at?
Um, we're going through an economic downturn. And the company I was working with at the time was scaling back. We were pulling offices back in. And I learned that people follow leaders. They don't work for companies. And I was watching business decisions being made that were violating what I felt were ethical in the way they were treating employees, making financial decisions. And I did not want to be aligned with that. And so I spent some time trying to think about, do I want to do this or do this on my own? And interviewed around a couple places, and I just decided to hang up my own shingle and get started. And then eventually took that and merged that in with a friend of mine, and we formed a company together. All right, then grew that. And I liked the entrepreneurial. And then we decided to shut our Houston office down and consolidate it with up into our home office up in Tulsa. I realized I had voted myself out of a job because I didn't want to move back up to Tulsa because I had an office up there one time. And I looked around and trying to figure out what I want to do. And I interviewed with all the major companies that reached out to me in Houston. One of the largest, privately held recruiting firms, some of the big national firms. Uh, and it was a heady time because people were saying, you want to come work with me, But I joined up with Steverson, which is a small boutique company, specifically because I want to see my thumbprint on the wall. And that's what I found, that when people look at trying to go out on their own from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I had a choice to go out doing it by myself, but I felt it was better for me to line up with somebody, was, be part of a team of growing things forward. So I went through both lines. I went out on my own as a solopreneur, and that's a tough road, right? You know that, uh, and so it's tough. You have to have a certain mindset. And I found that I was really worked well within a coalition of people to be able to drive things forward, but not in a big monolith. I wanted to be able to, when I went to work, I wanted to see the efforts of what I did in direct correlation and not be limited by, politics and silos.
Well, and that kind of goes into my next question. And I'm jumping a little forward more than I normally do, but when you were looking at building and scaling, was it better to, have a coalition of people or just go be the lone wolf charging, building your solo company into a bigger company?
The, yeah, you have to look at how you're wired. For me personally, um, didn't fit my wiring. In other words, if you look at the DISC, the personality assessments, which is one of my favorite tools to use, it was game changing when I started saying, okay, this is how I'm naturally wired, and I found that I need to be involved in a situation where I interact with people. It's us. Let's go us do it. I'm more for the cause. Would make things happen. You have to decide if you're a visionary. In other words, can you see things that aren't here yet? Are you systems and process driven? Can you create systems and process? And what I found is that there are other people who are better doing that than me. I'm the engagement guy. Give me something I can light a candle, right? I'm good at it. People say, Mike, it's not you can sell ice cubes to Eskimos. Is you can get people fired up about things, and that's where I would get called to do. And some of the extracurricular activity I do with is on the board of the Texas Search Recruiting and Staffing Association, trade association for our recruiting industry here in Texas. Ministries I'm involved with. I enjoy going in and firing things up. But I realized in looking at myself, I work better if I have people or systems and process that can help me build that. help me to come alongside. So you have to decide what you're calling. I've got a client that I work with some of the consulting that I do now, and she's a master at systems and processing. Not doing, but being risky enough to say, "Hey, we're going to add this in. Let's find somebody. We can find best practice. Let's implement this." And willing to go out there and build those things and trying to have what's not working. We need a process around. And because of that, she's scaling her business really effectively in a multi-city type of operation.
That is awesome. Okay. Well, I mean, that actually plays perfectly into the next question that I have is like, when you're looking at building your business and scaling your business, of course, every business, unless, I mean, even as a solopreneur, you're still like dealing with people in
Hmm.
this world. But to grow a recruiting company, it's a people business, it's a team business. How do you build or slash, first of all, how do you find high performers?
Oh, man, that's I think that's the question I'm asking most often, especially in today's marketplace. And I think better than finding them, how do you ferret them out? Because what happens is I call them the gonna bees versus the wannabes. And there's a lot of people who want to be high performers. The question is, who are the gonna bees? Who are the ones who make it? I'll give you an example. Nicole Self, who is a partner with a company called Rich Wayne and Roberts. She's a seven-figure year after year producer. She's an amazing force of nature. And one of the most kind-hearted, personable people you'll ever meet. So she's not an in-your-face gunslinger type of deal cutter kind of person. Her background was in college. She was a gymnast, a nationally ranked collegiate gymnast. So, and she said, I wasn't the most talented. I just developed really strong work ethic and practice. And so she gets into our business after coming out of school and trying to sell like cosmetics programs and stuff, kind of processes and systems and kind of a network marketing kind of deal. Wasn't really satisfied with it. And somebody said, hey, you ought to try recruiting. And so what she did is she came into this business and she applied everything she learned from being a gymnast. She applied everything she learned from the multi-marketing, program and used her strong direction of practice of knocking on doors and knocking on doors and it was the discipline that she had developed and that's made her the success over the years and so and it's made her consistent over the years and so when you're asking where do you look, yeah, it's great to be able to go find somebody who's working for a competitor that there's something that's broken there, but if they came to work with you it would improve. That's hard to do. I made that mistake a lot of times because I said, you know what? I'll pull out my screwdriver and then I'll sit there and, oh, they're working. Oh, I'm better than that. Tweak it up. And guess what? 80, 90% failure on that. Very seldom did we bring somebody in who was a really high performer. Now, when it did work is if somebody were working with a company, a national company, we were successful with a few of those. And they got tired of like I was working with a big structure. They wanted something that was so much more personal, not more flexible. Because you'll find that, then you understand this as being a solopreneur, entrepreneur kind of thing, is that being in business for yourself does not give you more flexibility. Matter of fact, I think it requires more regimentation. You just don't have anybody else to regiment. You got to regiment yourself, right? And so that's the downturn. And so what you have to do is you have to look for people that wherever they were before, they were successful, but there was something that was missing from the wheel. Were they given the guidance and the training? I've got one of the clients I work with, they're a training company. In other words, they hire people who want to be trained. Well, the what I call the solo gunslinger doesn't work well for them. The person's, look, I know how to do this. Just give me a desk and a phone. There's no reason to go to work for that company. There's another organization that hates training. They hate leading people. But they built a business model that says, come to work with us. We're going to give you a lot of flexibility and freedom. We'll cover your overhead. We'll put you in a team. We'll make some things happen. But you better be able to guide and teach and train yourself. Because if you can't tighten up your own belt, you're not going to get it here. Two different examples. And so as leaders, we have to we have to first identify what's our culture, what's going to be the magnet that's going to draw somebody. And then you look into the marketplace, into avenues where somebody has been given an opportunity to perform and accepted the challenge, where they're managing projects. There's assessments that are out there that help us understand: are they farmers or are they hunters? Right? And in other words, are they out there? Are they hunting? Are they good hunters? Prospectors, in other words, are they better? And you'll see this in the staffing side of the recruiting industry, where it's more of They get an account, and I got to manage that account, and I got to make sure I squeeze everything out of it. Well, they use outside salespeople to prospect, bring the business in so that the farmers can sit and be able to manage. And so if that's a kind of a long answer, I know you were asking, Mike, do I go to a bowling alley to find the best people? Where do I go? It has to do with environments where people are in high interaction with others, high interaction in some form or fashion. And in that interaction, they had to do something to instigate things themselves. I hired somebody I'll just mention it because it's a good company. Robert Half is one of the largest if not, probably not the one of the largest in the business. Hired somebody out of their organization who was not happy. And he came to work for us, and he was one of their top performers, and he failed miserably for us. And I went back and I started thinking, what happened there? And what happened was the challenge he faced was he was used to working for this big machine, this big crunching machine. It was Robert Half system, advertising, all this traffic coming in and coming out, attraction of clients. Other people, high regimentation, high numbers. You got to hit this thing. Somebody sitting with a thumb on you all the time. He comes to work for me and go, well, here's your dad. Let's go. Let's make something happen. Here's your territory. Let's go make something happen. And he didn't have the ability to be able to turn the machine himself. Right. And so if you're working in a boutique company, you got to be the spinner. You got to be the person putting that focus in each and every day. And so you're looking for somebody who had to do that someplace else. So you go look for people who, of course, maybe sold someplace else, or somebody who had a business on the side growing up, somebody who worked their way through school. There's always, great information. Somebody who was in a situation where the company was going through a downturn, and you ask the question of what did they do to help steer the ship? Now, what did the bosses do? What did they do to help steer the ship? You start looking for individual contribution of self-initiative, self-drive. And the other question we used to love to ask, which was, what was the greatest challenge or problem or difficult time in your life that you ever faced with? And what you're looking for is somebody who's faced adversity. And the reason for that is that one of the people on my strategies for tomorrow's leaders, YouTube series I run, Michael Petrak and I were talking about this. He calls it the number one trait that it takes to be successful in this business is resilience. The number one trait, more than smooth communication skills, it's resilience. It's the ability to have resolve, to be able to move through things. Because it's not a question, are you going to run into an obstacle today? It's which one and how many. And you have to have resolve to get through that. And so we would ask that question, looking for somebody who's had to overcome death in the family, some major thing. And the person we didn't hire when we asked that question was a young lady, was fairly recently out of school. And we asked her the question, what's the biggest difficulty you ever had? She looked up and she got kind of misty-eyed. She said, so my dad took away my credit cards in college and I had no money left. And I went, okay, fine. She didn't get hired. That's the best you can do. You want somebody who's faced life and grabbed the bull by the horn, so to speak, and had to steer it in some form or fashion. It's that internal drive so that no matter what situation they're in, they will find a way to become successful. And you don't have to be the catalyst. What you have to be is the guide.
Okay. So we now have found the right people. How do you build that into a cohesive, high performing team?
I think that Benjamin, the first thing, it has to do with making sure that as a leader, you embrace the word clarity. And what I mean by that is that when people come together and they're trying to work together as a team, you have to be clear on what the objectives are that you're trying to accomplish. You have to be the one who is pointing the light in the direction for people to step up and, but what are we trying to do? You have to be clear on the systems and processes that need to be used. Now, in our business, we hire a lot of independent people a lot of times, but the big mistake I've seen leaders make time and time again is they hire people and they give them too much rope. Now, I'm not talking about micromanaging, but it has to do with bringing people in, and this person does this their way, and this person does it their way, and then this person does it their way. And there's no sort of standards, no floor for people to stand on. no acceptable levels of performance, no acceptable way of doing things, such as like a CRM system, right? I had, somebody who was a really high producer for us, and I had to wrestle with her. She turned out to be the highest producing person in our company. Worked with her for 14 years. Amazing work. One of my favorite people. But I had to consistently try to move her out of her spiral notebook of writing stuff down and having this bump file type of thing to be able to put information into the system, right? Because she goes, that's a waste of time. Well, it really isn't if you're running a business. If you're running a business, and we were running a business. And so we had to have people that said, this is systems and process. And it wasn't just for control purposes. I knew personally, I knew that whenever I went from a manual system to my very first computer system, yes, I'm not a dinosaur, but I knew that day. What happened was, for 6 months, I thought it was a waste of time to put data into the system because I was faster if I just did things on my own and looked at my own file. Well, 6 months out, I ended up making a placement that with somebody that I completely forgot about. But I go on the system and plugged a search in, and the person's name popped up. Well, now the system's working for me. And I started realizing that once I get enough data in there and I learn how to use it and work with it, then what takes place is I've got systems and processes to help me scale. And so it's as a leader of an organization, when you're trying to build a team, it's important to have clarity on systems and processes. But it's important for the team to understand, I call them sandbox rules. In other words, as a team, here's how we operate, and we're going to operate for the broad. You get to do this. As long as we stay in the sandbox, it's okay. What happens is we can't do something. Well, this time I'm going to work on this particular situation, and then next month I'm going to work on another situation. That situation's kind of in your territory, but it's because I know somebody. It's like, what's the sandbox rule? What's the sandbox rules that says that whenever, if we're working on a project together, that I'm going to give you feedback, get feedback too, get you involved in the process. What's the sandbox rules that says you're going to stay out of my way when I'm trying to do something and you're going to give me slack? What are the rules? Because if we understand guidelines on those lines, then we get a chance to operate collectively as a team. And I think the third part of it has to do with as a leader recognizing that you have to build a culture, because you use the word high performance, right? You have to build a culture where people are focused on raising the bar. And the reason we're afraid to raise the bar is we're afraid to fail. Meaning that I'm going to shoot for this, but if I don't hit that, I feel like a failure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot for this, shoot at this level, because I can hit that level. But what happens is in our business is that if you aren't raising the bar on what you expect of yourself, or your company doesn't expect of you, or you expect of your company, there are economic forces that literally will push you back. There's no staying still. When I first got into business, it's like we're working for a company, we're scaling fast, and first role is first time in first leadership role, we hit our goals. I was all excited about it. VP came in and said, good job. Now, everybody, we're raising our goals for next year 15%. And then I went out there and we went after it again, hit that, and I'm tongues hanging at the end of the year. Oh, great job! Guess what? 10% next year. We increase it. And I'm going, is this man never happy? Can we not satisfy this guy? And then understand that you have to always be leaning forward. It's like skiing, right? I'm not a big skier, but I learned to ski later in life. And what was hard for me is to be an effective skier. You got to lean down the hill. It makes you feel like you're about me. It made me feel like I was going to fall on my face and fall down the hill. But what happens is when you lean into your skis, not over the skis, but lean into it, not back. What happens? You pick up momentum. And same principles works for us in business. Is that if you're not leaning forward, if you're not pushing in there, there are forces that will sit there and will literally knock you off stride. So those are sort of, off the top of my head, sort of, I guess I had 4 different caveats that you have to look into to build high performance team.
Ooh, I love that skiing example. And, leaning forward is important. And I know there's some skiers listening. I made the mistake my first time skiing, leaning backwards,
Yeah.
and ended up somehow on my back, ski still going,
Mm.
going down the hill,
Oh my God.
and like
I know exactly.
unable to stop,
Yeah.
no control.
Yeah, I grew up in South Louisiana. We didn't snow ski. I mean, it's like I always thought of skiing. I'm going to go up on a mountain and put 2 pieces of wood on my feet and throw myself off the side of a mountain. How can that be fun? So I grew up water skiing, exactly the opposite. Hold the rope. You got to lean back into it from a tension standpoint. Well, skiing is the opposite, and it's learning how to control that momentum. So using the energy of the mountain, and that's what we're trying to do with our business. We're trying to use the energy of momentum, use a coalition, pulling together, of being able to lean into each other, being able to drive, and that's what doors will kick open.
Awesome. So, okay, so we've now found the team. We're now built the team. And how do you make that a business that's going to keep on going? It's going to be like self-sustaining because that's really like the goal of a lot of owners.
Right? Yeah. You have to. I've been thinking about that a lot, and if you were to ask me my favorite technology, um, I would say it's a CRM system. And I say A because there's a lot of great ones out there. It depends upon your company and what you're involved with, what have you. But when I say CRM system, it's customer relation management system, right? Well, the mistake that I see us making is we don't build the value of our contacts. In other words, I have to build a system as a company that I'm tracking down. I'm spending a lot of time and energy and effort in making sure that I have documented who are hiring authorities, who are prospects, who are influencers from a business development standpoint, so that I can do two things. One is I can develop call campaigns, getting people on the phone, making outreach phone calls to them, developing relationships with key targets. Uh, the second is, and from a recruiting standpoint, recognizing is who I talk to today is not who I'm placing today. Who I talk to is probably going to place tomorrow. Or more importantly, who I'm talking to is going to lead me to the third level. And what I mean by the third level is recruiters, is the third level is I'm talking to somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And the third level is the person I'm probably going to place, not the first two. But that's the magic of our business, is to build something that you can have that much churn, that much information going in the marketplace, so that you can literally push buttons and push information out into the marketplace to make sure that your name is where it needs to be heard and known and established and recognized. It's really funny. Yesterday, I didn't think about this. Yesterday, I was talking to somebody who I know really well. She's part of my coalition I have. I run a mastermind group for recruiting owners and managers. And I was talking to her yesterday, and she goes, "I'm not getting your email." And I said, "I can't have. I mean, I've checked. I mean, it's like I know it's coming to you." And she goes, "What's it coming from?" I said, "I don't know. It's either coming from me or it's coming from my company, Lighting the Path." He goes, "What's that?" "Well, Lighting the Path. Let me go check." "Oh, here it is, Lighting the Path. I didn't recognize that. I recognize your name." So here's my new system. I got to go back now, and I'm going to get my CRM manager, and I'm going to get her to say, "Okay, we got to anything that comes out, it's got to come out with my name on. It. Got to come out with my name on." So, but what happens is you want to, as a business owner, how do I build something that the data sitting inside of my company is going to produce successful searches and successful candidates? Because LinkedIn is an awesome tool, phenomenal tool. It was supposed to put us out of business, by the way, just like Indeed was, or the job boards were. And instead, they all became the greatest resource for recruiter. They don't need us anymore because LinkedIn can find all the people. What LinkedIn did is it took away all the low hanging fruit, meaning that HR managers can put somebody out there and go and find easy people. They'll post something and people will respond, maybe. But with the advantage that you have whenever you're competing in the marketplace is whenever you build silos, when you develop networks of people within certain areas, so where you can work on increasing your visibility in certain marketplaces, that increases what I call sustainability from a long term standpoint. Uh, the second part of it is, and this is my new platform I'm standing on a lot right now, is I think the biggest weakness that we have in the recruiting industry. And this is, if you're an owner, it's important. A manager, it's important to understand this. If you're a recruiter, it's important to understand that. Is that we are the weakest industry I've ever seen on planning. And what I mean by that is that we don't. I know I don't. I know my people didn't. My client. We don't plan our next day as effective. We don't put an importance on it. What happened? We put importance on making phone calls and put on recruiting people and getting business people. And whatever time is left over at the end of the day, we'll put a to-do list together. Well, a to-do list is not the same as a plan. It just says, I'm going to do these things. But a plan is, here are the results I want to get tomorrow. Now, I'm going to spend 45 minutes, maybe an hour. I don't know. I'm going to spend loading my guns up today. So when I'm firing tomorrow, I'm a laser beam. I'm not a shotgun. And what I found is the more time I invest at the end of my day to load up for the next day, the more productive my next day is. The more I think about tomorrow, this is what I want to accomplish, not do. This is what I want to accomplish. In order to accomplish this, now I have to do this. And so the planning part of getting people and because we have the ability today, if I'm going to make 30 phone calls tomorrow, is do I spend time researching and looking, who are these people I'm calling? Why am I calling them? And who are they? What am I going to say? What am I going to do? See, we used to think that was a waste of time. They called it paralysis by analysis. I didn't do things that I spent all my time analyzing, and it's true. I don't need to spend an hour reading a resume to decide if I want to call them. I should be able to do that in less than 2 minutes. There's no reason to spend more than 2 minutes reading a resume, maybe a minute, because I'm looking for, do I want to talk to this person? If you spend more than that, that's paralysis by analysis. But there's a difference in that and looking at saying, okay, here's where I'm headed tomorrow. And so if you build that type of culture in as an organization where people really spend time effectively putting together their action plan for the next day, and going back to leaders, if you're listening to this, if I tell you to plan on your time, not my time as a leader, I'm telling you this isn't important. If I'm willing to say, I'm going to give you part of my day, my business day, and let you plan on my dime, I'm now elevating its level of importance. As a leader, am I coming back and say, hey, how's your plan going on? What do you got planned for this week? And if somebody's newer in the business where you have to kind of shepherd them a little bit more, actually sit down and spend time reviewing them. Building a culture that planning is important it actually helps people feel more confident because they're going to know what to say. They got an idea what to say.
I love this because by the time this episode goes live, another episode that I just did with, a million dollar biller, Rich Rosen.
Hmm.
And that was one of the things that we talked about because at least early in my career, planning was hopping into your day timer and here's what I'm going to do tomorrow.
That's the to-do list. Yeah.
Yeah. And so every time I've heard some of these, I don't want to say people that have been in the game a while, but people that have been in the game a while, they're talking about planning. Well, you got to plan your day. You got to plan your day. And most people that have not have been around will say an MRI or some of those circles, when they thought planning their day was just, all right, got my to-do list. Here's the 3 things that I want to accomplish tomorrow.
Hmm.
I had to nail down Rich Rosen about a year ago. And I'm like, you keep on talking about planning. Excuse my language. What the fuck are you talking about? And he was like, no, I'm building out my list of 50 people to call tomorrow. That is planning.
Hmm. And
So
and
I know,
and as he builds his list, because I know Rich, as he builds his list, the people on the list for a reason. Here's why I'm calling them tomorrow, and it's clear. Because what happens is if we have clarity of why, now when I call you, the call can go instead of, hey, my name's Mike, is what I'm doing, or whatever, and I'm going to sound like the adult in Charlie Brown cartoons. Instead, I pick up the phone and I call you, leave you a voicemail and say, Benjamin, Mike Lejeune, the reason I'm reaching out to you is because of who you are. I found out of your role, your presence in this podcast universe of having one of the most outstanding voices in the recruiting industry with what you're doing. You seem to be doing some cutting edge stuff. We'd love an opportunity for you and I to spend just a couple of minutes together. I got a project I'm working on. Here's my number. Now, what's the chances you're going to call me back?
much higher.
Yeah. Versus, hey, I'm Mike. I've got this. I got this job. I got this. In other words, you can personalize it more. There's more of a reason why when I do outreach. And so now, again, you're not going to spend a half a day to put a plan together to make an hour worth of phone call. That's not productive. That's overdoing it. You don't need that. But if you're not investing 45 minutes to an hour to get your gun loaded for the next day, you talk about MRI or some of the larger organizations, they have they call them roll up lists or call lists or whatever. Uh, the idea of planning was run the search, put the list together, got 100 names, make your phone calls. Well, now I got this list, and it's like I'm going. Yeah, unfortunately, that's stage one, step one of maybe putting a plan together. But the question is now why am I calling these people? Who are they? Out of that list, I'm going to prioritize them. The first 20 are here. The second 20 are here because out of all that list, are there companies that I really want to go after? Are there somebody that I've heard about? Uh, I will tell you that you're making me think about when it comes on the subject of planning. Am I planning to look for leads? I think that in our business, nobody likes to, what we used to call them cold call. Well, the reason you stop the cold call today is you're not pursuing leads. That's information in the market, gathering market intel about projects that are going on, acquisitions, mergers, divestitures, new technology, something. I mean, somebody comes up with a new piece of technology, guess what? It's gonna stream its way down through the production and operations and accounting. And so now I'm calling up and say, look, I understand this is what's going on. You got this new piece, a new division you're launching. It's a totally different way of being perceived in the marketplace. But you got to have your ear to the ground. You got to be asking people. You have questions along those lines.
Well, that's awesome. And so if you're listening to this, whether you're a leader or not a leader, like I dare you, I dare you to spend 1 week with the last hour of your day planning in the way that Mike and Rich have talked about. And I'd love to hear from you and see how like that challenge goes. Oh, Mike, before we head over to the quick fire questions, I do want to touch on one more thing. You built and sold a company. You've now had interactions, coaching, mastermind groups with many other leaders. What do you think are the three principles that either helped you or has helped other people that you've consulted with sell their company? Like the building part to sell.
Hmm. Let me reverse engineer that for you. Let me tell you about the things that I learned that are most important. Um, Number one is that you have to have strong systems and processes so that an organization is not just buying your client list. Right. And that's a key factor. So if you're looking at one day of scaling to be able to have an exit plan, you really want to have systems and processes in place. Now, having systems and processes in place helps the people working with you be able to operate more effectively, right? But the end game is it makes it, an outsider looking in and going, this is a well-run business. Look at the systems process. They have a way of doing it. Second of all is that I know when we're going through the vetting process, one of the things that they looked at was client mix. You have to have a diverse client mix. I'm not talking about industry. I'm talking about you got to look at and be leery of having a business where I've got one of my clients that I work with, the new coaching with. He's currently 90% of his business is coming from one company. He's doing well, doing a lot of business with that company. That business it diminishes its market value because what happens is what happens if that particular client that loses, and especially when you go through an acquisition, the chances of people staying there because of the change and stuff, there's a risk. There's a risk factor. So that it gets de-escalated. The value gets de-escalated. So you need to look at what am I doing to grow to make sure I'm spending time of diversifying my client mix. So you got systems and processes. You've got client mix, and then the third is going to be from a succession plan standpoint. Do you have somebody who's been vetted, trained, and developed to come after you? In other words, when you leave the field and you hand the keys over to somebody else, is there somebody internally from a management standpoint that can keep things running? So in other words, have you built your right hand? Or you built somebody to come in who can do these things? Because if not, what happens is the value goes down because they're going to have to take somebody else and plug them into that. Value increases if you can stay as a self-sustaining business unit that adds on to what they're already doing. So those are the sort of the three caveats as I went through the process that I knew that we were being evaluated by.
Well, let me kind of add in one more thing. Is there something that you thought would have been important in your eyes that ended up not being important at all when it came to building to sell?
Yeah. Um, Goodwill. The technical, it's like the name of our company, right? So we'd been in business almost 30 years, and we saw a lot of value in that. Look at the value of this. I just helped another client of mine go through an internal acquisition where they're looking at a value system of their three top producers taking over for the founder of the firm and was selling it internally. And he was with the same place I was. Look at what I've done for 40 years. Look at with the look at the goodwill. Now, the name of the company will have some continued goodwill. I thought it had more goodwill, more value than what it did. What has more value is literally the current relationships I've got with the companies that I'm doing business with. What's the depth of them? What's the knowledge base that they have of us and we have of them? How diverse am I established within an organization? Am I established to a point where it's just with the HR manager? Am I at the C-suite? Am I in with different department managers? Have I diversified? Um, it's do I again going back to it? Do I have a marketing machine that's capable of generating business? New business coming in. So from a value standpoint, most acquisitions in our space is very much asset based acquisition. That meaning that who are the clients? What's the receivables running with those clients? What do we have? I'm not talking about desks and chairs and computer systems. I'm talking about the run rate. In other words, right now, based upon where we are, what's the projection for the future? And so you want to be looking at, are you trending up? Are you trending down? The value goes up if you're trending up. If you're trending down, it gets diminished, and that will overshadow this awesome goodwill that I've built. It's not that it's meaningless. It's not that it's meaningless, but it just I thought that it was just a higher marketplace value put on it than especially after I put my blood and sweat and tears and just bled for years and went through economic downturns and all the challenges we have as entrepreneurs. At the end of the day, it's a numbers deal. They look at the numbers on the book and they extrapolate it out and they said, I'm going to pay you this. And the expectation is that I need to be able to recoup that in my profits within a 3 to 5 year period of time. And at the end of the day, that's where my that's going to be the offer that I'm going to get for my company.
Awesome. Well, before we move on to the quick fire questions, Mike, is there anything else that you want to share about any of the topics that we covered?
Um, no, I really love the conversations we've had about what it takes to sort of scale and everything we talked about from a leadership standpoint. I hope if somebody's listening, is, well, I'm not a leader. I'm a recruiter, business development person, senior person, junior person. Um, it cascades. The message is just as relevant for you as it is from a leader standpoint. Because what makes a good leader in this business is what makes a good recruiter. It's the ability to go out there and manage yourself, to be able to drive. What do you want to accomplish in this business? What do you want to get out of your career? I think that as I was preparing, my thoughts for our call today, and knowing, trying to guess what you were going to ask me, there's one thing that kept coming back to mind is that when I look back over my career and the growth that I've gone through, I recognize that every year I had something that I wanted to try to learn, and I think I learned as much, if not more, last year than I did the first year in the business. It was different. First year in the business, I'm learning how to dial a phone and what do I say? How do I introduce myself or whatever. And so last year it was bigger picture. It was learning how to have business conversations with people about large scale projects and systems, and in my case, talking to leaders about what goes on inside the heart and the minds of the people you're trying to lead, and in yours, and what battles you're facing. But I think that if somebody really takes that kind of ownership in their career to say, this year I'm going to invest this much money, this much time in learning how to do this new, more, or better. And the key thing, and having a target on that. Because then what happens is you see yourself growing. You see yourself, moving forward. You see yourself becoming. So when you look over your shoulder, you're not just repeating last year. It takes a different shape, but you end up going from one platform to another, to another, to another. But you're doing out of your design as opposed to just responding to what life throws at you.
I absolutely love that, Mike. So, on to the quick fire questions. And these are going to be fun just because I'd
Now, you
love
make me
your
nervous,
insight.
but quick fire. I don't know.
And this is gonna be fun just 'cause, the insight that you have, the people that you're coaching, the experiences that you've had. What advice would you give to a recruiter that's just getting started in this industry this year?
Yeah. Um, Learn how to spell the word network. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is that if I were going to do a do over, because I predate LinkedIn, I've been at this for a while, right? Um, I wish that I had embraced the subject of network earlier in my career, where I was intentional on building a network of people that I could be in contact with, so that if I grew my network, the goal is next year I want my job to be easier than this year. The way I do that is I have to learn how to get better at the job, and I have to know more people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grow my network every year. I've got a target of people now at this stage of my career that I want to grow my network this year. And I've got sort of a pool of people that is, I need to get to know more people in this space. Some of them I've already identified, some of them I haven't yet. But in this space, I'm going to go and grow my network. And so if you're just getting started in this business, you want to think about, how do you talk to people, and how do you build people that you can call and talk to, who are, as my dad taught me this phrase, bird dogs, because he raised these English spaniels who like to go bird hunting. And I used to love watching them because they'd get out in the bush and they'd sit there, and there's a bird off in the brush you couldn't see, but all of a sudden the dog would stop and its tail would stick out behind him and nose would point. It was a pointer. That's what they'd point. Well, I wish I had a list of all the placements that I made over my career where somebody pointed me to something. Well, wouldn't it be great to have been more intentional of developing the pointers, the bird dogs, the influencers, as opposed to just kind of stumbling into them? And I think that if you do that, then what happens is you're building a network for yourself, that network takes on high value because that network produces the results that you need, because it's information coming at you. And this is an information management business. That's what we're in.
Phenomenal. And I'm gonna ask the same question, but for people that have, I don't wanna say been around the block, 5, 10, 15, 20. I'm almost 2 decades in this wonderful world.
Ooh,
What
measuring
if
decades now. I like that.
I know. What advice would you give to, an experienced recruiter to see success?
I'm sorry, with an experienced recruiter, somebody who's
Yeah.
again, Texas term, long in tooth, right? So, um, if somebody's been at this for a while, um, and it depends upon challenges that they may be facing or what they want to try to do. The question is, is there a spark that needs to get relit? Um, One of the best ways to light a spark, I hadn't thought about this before. Now, let me tell you what's coming to my mind right now. The best
Go.
way to light a spark is to find somebody like Benjamin that you can mentor. Now, you just use you as a name. In other words, find somebody you can go out and mentor. And I'm doing that right now personally with people who are speakers. I have a calling in that. I like helping people learn how to use their voice bigger, better, badder, because I think our industry needs it. But I love watching people grow and develop, just like I did early in my career, except now I have just people I'm trying to shepherd along those lines. And you know what's really fascinating is the more that I give away, the more comes back to me. And that is what I've learned throughout my career. And for somebody who's got a lot of experience of this, you have a lot of resources that you could share. And sometimes we run into this fear of giving things away. But the reality is the more that I can help somebody, um, take it from a spiritual standpoint, I think you get blessed. Take it from the universe rewards you, whatever you want to call it, whatever your walk is. But I truly believe that the more that we can pour into others, the more gets poured back into us. And what happens is we get lit up. And sometimes as we get more experience in this business, it becomes rote, and we need more of a challenge. And sometimes people get to a stage where they feel like, I'm burned out. I want to do something different. And the reality is that they don't need to do something different. They need to stay in the same field that they're in, but find other ways to be able to get filled back up, while they're doing stuff that historically might be draining to them.
I love that. Finding a way to relight your fire
Yeah.
by mentoring.
Hmm.
Love that, Mike. All right. Mike, has there been a book that has had a huge impact on your career?
There's a couple of them. The first one that pops to mind is Leadership as an Art. And it's an older book because it's one of the very first leadership books I ever read. It's only about that thick. It's written by a guy named Max Dupree, who was the chairman of the board of was chairman of the board of the um, God, I'm losing it. It's the furniture company. It'll come to me later on. But anyway, but he wrote this book called it was a world class organization, and what I found fascinating about it is he spent so much time talking about these truisms about the heart of the leader and the heart of the people. And we have to recognize that the leadership in today's world is not an order giver. It's not the person who's sitting there and they're charged up the hill. The leader in today's world is somebody who creates an environment that people are going to choose to follow them. Well, one of the greatest ways to ignite people and get them connected to you is if they feel like you value them, you value and appreciate the people who are part of the team, and you're doing things to make sure that they feel valued. And feeling valued is not putting a foosball or a ping pong table in the middle of the floor. Used to, that was a big deal. California started this stuff. Silicon Valley. So I love talking about California. It's like, I better be careful. My wife's going to give me a hard time for this. I'm not going to go down that road. There's just some stuff that came out of Silicon Valley that, from a cultural standpoint, it's really hard for me to put in my company, right? Serving wine on Friday afternoons ain't going to happen. It's just not going to. Uh, the but it's what happens is where people get truly engaged is if the people working for you feel like you're interested in their development. And I think that leadership is an art. It's the word about around art that really kind of caught my attention with. Uh, and so that would be one. The the second one that would I would pick that would be uh, I'm actually going all the way back to the beginning of my career because it was just so transformational for me. I think it's Smalt's his name or something. It's the magic of thinking big, right? And it's written by a psychotherapist. And the reason why it struck me was I remember some stuff he wrote about in there about a plastic surgeon, and he would go in and he would do all of these. He would do reconstruction, facial things on these people. And after he did it, he'd put them in front of a mirror, and they would not see the change because they just still saw themselves the same as they were before. They didn't recognize the change. And it struck me as he talked about, how do I think higher of my capability than whatever my circumstance and situation calls for today? And so there's a whole lot of books that fall into that category I've read over the years that has to do with how do we shape our mind to be able to see what I call is possible as opposed to what will probably happen. How do I make that shift? And so, I mean, so that's where I pick Magic of Thinking Big it falls in that category. There's a lot of more current things along those lines that are out there that address the same thing. Business Owners Traction is a great book that's out there right now. It talks about EOS, sort of the EOS culture. But it's the heart of what it's about. It's about systems and processes and learning about how do I make sure that they're operating with maximum efficiency and effectiveness. And what are the ones that are most important? And what I refer to as having hyper focus, not focus, hyper focus on the steps that we need to take, bring clarity. Here are the steps we need to take, and to be able to stay focused on that to get the result that we want.
Awesome. Well, let me kind of keep it in that same gear. What do you think has been a huge impact or a huge player in your own personal success?
Hmm. And the first word that pops out in my mind is faith. It's my faith walk, and it's been like this through a period of time. Uh, and the biggest driver for me is the closer I became to recognizing um, the person that God created me to be, and to seek that and to step in that direction. As a friend of mine pointed out, he said, "Mike, when are you going to quit swimming upstream, banging into rocks, and start going downstream?" And because I was driving our company filled with stress, filled with anxiety. We don't have time to get into it, but you're talking to somebody who lived like 14 years with massive panic attacks. to a point that I couldn't ride elevators, escalators, couldn't get on an airplane. And, just my little world just kept shrinking down. And, I mean, for me to do what I do today is, one, it's just, there's a God miracle in there. The second part of it has to do with just an unbelievable blessing that I've had to recognize that there's specialness in inside of each and every one of us. And how do we embrace? How do we look for that? How do we develop that? How do we? Uh, for me, panic attacks were. I was extremely uncomfortable. Right, I'm panicking. I'm freaking out, man. And so I would run from discomfort. And now I try to figure out what am I uncomfortable with, and so now I go do it. And I don't, I'm not going to skydive. I don't want to. I am not skydiving. Why would anybody throw themselves out of a good airplane? I'm not going to do it. But I mean, I think that is there a person that I'm a little bit uncomfortable talking to? That's the person I got to call and talk. Right? Is there something? Is there something I'm hesitant about doing? I got to go there because what happens is it's in our discomfort is where growth comes from. And so, what can I do to figure out? I'm working on a program right now, but are you willing to live in your freak out zone? The place where because what happens is when you go there and you learn how to breathe through it and recognize that whatever the situation and circumstance is dealing with, you're going to get through it. I mean, I'm wrestling with that right now. You and I were talking earlier. My wife has been battling with pneumonia for this past week. I have to tell you, uh, I've been in my freak out zone all week long. And the pneumonia, you're in the hospital for a week, with them sticking IVs and masks, and it's just like going and watching her just struggling breathing. And the good news is, came home last night, so I'm back home. I'm in my studio now, and she's doing okay. And so we're doing some stuff at home now. But I'm telling you this, every day I had to tell myself, we're going to get through this. Now, what do we do? And we're going to what new thing? What have we tried? What have we not tried? Having conversations with doctors who know 99% more than I do. When it comes to medicine, that's not my gifting. They use words that I'm going, what the heck did he just say? Uh, but recognizing that I still need to go and ask questions. I need to go find out what's going on. I need to say, look, let's slow down. Help me understand. What are we talking about here? And go into that space and take a step. That's life. That's life. That's business. And that's what our business says as recruiters in the recruiting industry, because that's our market, right? That we're speaking to, is that you're talking to people each and every day, or thrown in a brand new situation that you don't know anything about because it's a brand new client or a brand new person. And so you develop the skill and the heart to recognize that I can ask enough questions as I talk to this person to figure out a way to solve this situation. But I got to be willing to be uncomfortable while I'm doing that. I got to be willing to be able to stretch myself. I got to be willing to take a breath when I hit that roadblock that I can't figure something out. Making the easy placements, I call the lay downs. Client calls you up and gives you this job order and you scratch your head. How am I going to find that person? The next phone call you get is from a candidate with that background and they're looking for a job, and you walk away feeling like you're a super recruiter. And no, you just took a breath. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about sustainability and consistency comes from being able to look each and every day. But how do I stretch myself to go, okay, what am I going to do different? What am I going to do? What am I going to do better? And how to be uncomfortable doing that. Recognize that you will, if you keep taking steps, what I call move the ball. If you move the ball, by the way, that's the title of my new book that I'm writing this year. Move the ball. You'll be amazed at where you stand up one day and you look over your shoulder, and I'm not freaked out, stuck in my apartment trying to figure out, oh my God, how am I going to drive to work? So literally jumping on an airplane and flying to South Africa to give a program. So it's amazing story, amazing journey.
That's awesome. Well, and this kind of this is one of my favorite questions. You've seen a lot in the recruiting world. You've been through a lot in the recruiting world. What if you were able to go have a cup of coffee with yourself in the first week that you just got started?
Mm.
What would you tell yourself?
Hmm. But you're going to make it. You're going to make it. Because what happens is in this business, for most of us, now there's some of us, our egos are strong enough. You go, have no doubt you're going to make it. You're just going to go, you're going to make it. You're going to kick it in, right? But, it's when the no start comes up, the counter offer comes in, that derails you, that literally knocks you off your feet. Uh, you question yourself, is you going to do this? Whenever you've worked on a search for a month and a half and you finally got the offer and the person turns it down, now you got to start the search all over again because you don't have another candidate in the wing. Uh, you're going to make it. The, uh, the second thing I would want to make sure if I'm having coffee with we'll call him Little Mike, uh, is that measure yourself this week by what you've learned, not what you did. Measure yourself by what you learned, not what you did, because you'll make a lot more money off of what you're learning than what you're doing. Yeah. That's what
Solid.
I think is the sustainability. You talk about Rich. I mean, I guarantee if you ask Rich, what did he learn this last year, versus his first year, yeah, massive. Because he's a chronic learner. He's a stretcher. He's willing. It's what he does, and that's why he's ranked as one of the top 25 recruiters in the country.
Mhm. Well, Mike, first of all, before I let you go, recap about the event coming up.
Oh yeah, the virtual conference. Sure, it's recap on it is we're going to have 9 sessions. Well, then I take the back. No, we have 11 sessions over 3 days. They're an hour, about hour breaks. So it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1:45. And then we're going to have some amazing leaders, people speaking on business development and on recruiting processes and systems. And I guarantee you're going to walk over to something with something you learn. You're also going to walk around, pick people specifically who are going to breathe fire into you. In other words, you will be inspired by the time you finish. You'll be poured into in a massive way. And then there's 2 days. There's an owner manager only Zoom meeting on Wednesday that I will have our Zoom room set up, and we'll be breaking the breakout rooms, and you'll be networking, and I'll be facilitating discussions on subjects such as KPIs and issues that people wrestling with in today's time. And then Thursday, I'll do the exact same thing again. But this one is for recruiters, and we'll be looking at business development, recruiting, and I'll be facilitating a discussion with other people with other counterparts. Give you a chance to meet other people in the business. Uh, like I said, there's 9 sessions behind that are how to. The cool thing about it is I'll have final approval on this probably next week or so, is that American Staffing Association and the National Association of Personnel Services will count all of these sessions for continuing education for anybody who has any type of certifications within those organizations. So it's going to be a monster day. It's going to be a monster week, February 20th, 21st, and 22nd.
Awesome. And outside of that, is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners before I let you go?
He. I hope you recognize the importance that you play in the lives of the people that you're serving. I believe that, and I saw this early on, that every day that I woke up and went to work, there's a chance that today I will do something. I will do something today that will literally change somebody's life. Um, Man, that's what a blessing. What an amazing blessing to be rewarded that way. Counter to that, what a phenomenal responsibility you're taking on your shoulders. That the work you do, that if you're willing to hold yourself to a standard of excellence. See, what happens is being good is no longer, that gets you in the door, maybe. But excellence is what gets you business. And so you have to be able to excel at this. Can't go through the motions, can't do average. There's too many people out there. There's too many options that companies have. You have to excel at this. But when you do, when you're willing to put that much of yourself out, 3 things are going to happen. You will impact a company. You will impact the lives of the people that you're serving. And more importantly, you're going to grow into who God created you to be.
I love that. Well, Mike, I'm so excited that you got to share. Incredible experience. You've been around a lot of incredible opportunities and incredible people.
Yeah, and I've been doing this for
Um,
decades. You can go and say that if you want to. So,
but for the listeners, I do want to remind you about halfway through, we were talking about planning. And I'm going to challenge you one more time, just bringing it up to the end of the podcast. Mike really talked about planning your day and planning for tomorrow. Do it for 1 week. And feel free, shoot Mike a message. How did it go? How did it change? Was it a better week if you spent like 45 minutes to an hour before you ended your day to prepare for the next day. So, so excited that you guys got a chance to listen to this. Mike just spent a good hour pouring into you. And what we do as a community, we grow as a community. So let's grow together, guys. Until next time.